The diplomatic hall aboard the GCS Concordia smelled of sterilized metal and thinly veiled condescension. Captain Elias Ward sat stiffly, arms crossed, as a holographic projection of High Arbitrator Zeltov flickered before him. The reptilian diplomat's golden eyes gleamed with skepticism. "Humanity is not our first choice for delicate matters," Zeltov intoned. "Or our second, or third." Elias fought the urge to sigh. "And yet here we are." The mission briefing had been infuriatingly vague, but the crux of it was simple. The Valari, one of the most advanced and insular species in the galaxy, had a problem they refused to solve themselves. Their crown princess, Exetari, was born blind and physically impaired, rendering her, by Valari standards, unfit to rule. No species had been able to form a proper mind link with her, a sacred bond necessary for diplomacy. If no connection was established, she would be exiled, and the Valari would withdraw from interstellar politics. The Galactic Council had exhausted their usual diplomatic contenders. So, in desperation or sheer spite, they sent humans. Elias glanced at his crew, the ragtag bunch chosen for this impossible task. Dr. Nia Carter adjusted the strap on her tool belt, her jumpsuit already smeared with grease. "An engineer more comfortable arguing with machines than people," she muttered. "If their fancy psychic ritual isn't working, maybe it's a hardware issue." Jules J. Ortega, their linguist and cultural expert, leaned forward, eyes bright with curiosity. "Has anyone actually asked Exetari what she wants?" Silence. Zeltov's tongue flickered. "It is not her choice. The bond must be formed, or she will be deemed unworthy." Jay huffed. "Yeah, that sounds like a great system." Then there was Reggie Vance, ex-smuggler turned diplomatic attaché. He lounged against the bulkhead, boots up, chewing on something that was almost certainly contraband. "So, let me get this straight," he drawled. "Every species in the galaxy gave up because they couldn't handle a princess who's a little different?" "No," Zeltov corrected. "Every species failed because they were not strong enough to bridge the divide." Elias leaned in. "And you think humans are?" The High Arbitrator hesitated. Then, in a voice that sounded almost reluctant, "You are adaptable. If nothing else, you persist beyond reason." Elias exhaled. "I'll take that as a compliment. When do we leave?" The Valari capital was a city of glass and gravity-defying spires, built in cascading tiers over an ocean of shimmering silver. Exetari's sanctuary sat at the highest point, a place of isolation rather than reverence. The humans were escorted inside by silent, expressionless Valari attendants. No one spoke of the princess as a person. She was referred to as a trial, a burden, a failed vessel. The disgust was subtle, but unmistakable. Elias clenched his jaw. He hated these kinds of missions. Not the high-stakes diplomacy, but the part where entire civilizations decided someone was worth less simply for being different. When they entered, Exetari did not greet them. She sat on a floating platform in the center of the chamber, her silver-white hair woven with delicate filaments of luminescent thread. Her skin, the same crystalline hue as her people's, glowed faintly in the dim light. She did not turn toward them, but Elias could tell she was listening. The air thrummed with a barely perceptible psychic presence, the remains of failed attempts to bond. Jay stepped forward first. "Your Highness." Exetari tilted her head. Her voice, when she spoke, was precise and cool. "Another delegation. Another waste of time." Jay grinned. "Oh, we're definitely a waste of time. But we're your waste of time now." A small pause. Then the barest twitch of her lips. Almost amusement. Elias exhaled. At least they weren't immediately thrown out. The problem was obvious now. The previous delegations had approached this like a puzzle to be solved or a test to be passed. But Exetari wasn't a riddle. She was a person. And if there was one thing humans did better than any species in the galaxy, it was making connections in ways no one expected. The first attempt was a disaster. The humans were expected to follow the standard Valari mind-linking procedure, a rigid, ceremonial process requiring precise synchronization of neural rhythms. Elias could feel the moment it failed, the links shattering like fragile ice. Exetari flinched. "You're just like the others." "No," Jay said immediately. "We're not." Exatari's voice was sharper now. You'll fail like they did. You will leave like they did. Elias saw Jay open his mouth to argue, but he lifted a hand, stopping him. Then let us fail, he said. And if we leave, you can say you were right all along. That gave Exatari pause. Finally, she said, one attempt, no more. Afterwards, the humans regrouped. Reggie tossed a screwdriver between his hands. So, the psychic thing isn't working. Gee, you think? Elias muttered. Dr. Carter tapped a finger against her chin. We're thinking about this wrong. We're forcing the connection using a method that wasn't designed for her. Jay snapped his fingers. What if we don't use their method? Reggie frowned. You got a better idea? Yeah. Jay grinned. We cheat. The next morning they returned. Exatari was waiting, arms crossed, resigned. But instead of following prescribed method, Jay pulled a small, rectangular device from his pocket, a music player. He pressed a button and a melody filled the air. Soft, rich, layered. A simple earth composition. Piano and strings, rising and falling in patterns that had nothing to do with neural frequencies. Exatari's expression flickered. What is this? Jay smiled. Something new. The music played on, and something shifted. The air, once thick with failed psychic echoes, now hummed with something warmer. Exatari's fingers twitched, following the rhythm. A connection, not of minds, but of understanding. For the first time, she didn't look tired. She looked curious. And curiosity? That was the first step to everything. The music faded, leaving only the quiet hum of the chamber's energy field. Exatari sat motionless, fingers still poised in the air as though she could catch the lingering notes between them. The humans held their breath. Then she exhaled a slow, measured breath. I do not understand this. She murmured. It does not speak in thoughts, yet it speaks. Jay's grin was immediate. Exactly. It's sound. Humans use it all the time to convey things that words and thoughts can't. Exatari turned her face toward him, though her milky white eyes remained unfocused. And you believe this will form a bond? Not yet. Elias cut in. But we're thinking your people have been going about this the wrong way. Maybe we don't need a mind link to form a connection. Maybe we just need to connect. The princess was silent for a moment. Then, slowly, she tapped her fingers against her armrest, mimicking the rhythm of the last few notes. This is not what the Valari would call acceptable diplomacy. Yeah, well, Reggie drawled. The Valari also think throwing their own princess into exile makes sense, so I'm not inclined to trust their judgment. Exatari's lips pressed together, but something in her posture shifted. Less rigid, less guarded. Finally, she inclined her head. Very well, humans, show me your methods. Let us see if you are as adaptable as they claim. It turned out Exatari had an incredible memory for sound. She could recall and reproduce melodies with stunning precision, something Jay excitedly called eidetic pitch. Within minutes, she had memorized the entire sequence of the song they played for her. But more importantly, she responded to it. So music works. Nia said, leaning against a console, what else do humans use when words aren't enough? Touch. Reggie offered. Some species are real big on nonverbal communication. Maybe a physical cue would work. Elias hesitated. Valari aren't exactly known for being tactile. Exatari tilted her head. That is true. Direct touch is reserved for the most intimate of bonds. Reggie smirked. Then let's start small. Try this. He took off one of his gloves, revealing the callous skin underneath, and lightly tapped a rhythm against the floor. A simple beat, 3 quick taps, then 2 slower ones. Exatari waited, then hesitantly pressed her fingers against the armrest of her platform, echoing the rhythm. The humans exchanged glances. She's mirroring, Nia said softly. That's a good sign. All right, Jay said. What about temperature? Humans react strongly to heat and cold, right? Maybe it's the same for her. Exatari frowned. I do not follow. Nia dug into her tool belt, pulling out a small thermal patch, used to regulate temperature in extreme environments. She activated it, and the patch warmed instantly. Then, she carefully placed it on the princess's palm. Exatari flinched at first, but then her fingers closed over the patch, her expression unreadable. Warm but controlled. Exactly, Nia said. It's a different kind of sensory input. Another way to communicate. Exatari sat in silence, her fingers brushing over the patch, the rhythm still tapping under her other hand. Finally, she whispered, "You humans, you approach problems sideways." "We approach them every way," Jay said, leaning forward. "That's what makes us different." For the first time, Exatari's expression was not one of skepticism, but of something almost like hope. Progress continued over the next few days. The humans worked tirelessly, introducing Exatari to new forms of sensory communication. The music became more complex. The tapping rhythms evolved into patterns of touch and response. They even experimented with scents. Jay had the idea to introduce her to various earth spices, which he found intriguing but overwhelmingly aggressive. Then, the real breakthrough happened. Exatari had been practicing with the modified neural interface Nia had built, an adaptive bridge meant to compensate for her inability to form traditional mind links. The interface was a mix of Valari biotech and human engineering, allowing Exatari to interact with data and energy fields in non-traditional ways. "All right," Nia said, adjusting the device. "Try reaching out through this. Don't force it, just feel." Exatari hesitated, then closed her eyes. A pulse of soft light emanated from the interface. The air shimmered. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, suddenly, Elias felt something. It wasn't words. It wasn't thoughts. It was impressions, warmth, curiosity, an echo of rhythm and sound. Not a mind link, but something else. A connection built not from force, but from shared understanding. Elias turned to the others. "Did you feel that?" Jay was grinning. "Oh, yeah, that was definitely something." Exatari's hands trembled slightly as she pulled back. Her voice was barely a whisper. "I did not think it possible." "Neither did we," Nia admitted. "But humans, we make impossible things happen." Exatari's head tilted, as if seeing them anew. Then, to their utter surprise, she laughed. It was quiet, uncertain, like she hadn't done in a long time, but unmistakable. "You humans," she murmured, "are truly ridiculous." Reggie grinned. "You should see us on a bad day." But before they could celebrate, the chamber doors slammed open. Valari officials stormed inside, their expressions grim. The lead diplomat, an older, severe-looking Valari named Counselor Varen, fixed Exatari with a piercing stare. "What have you done?" he demanded. Exatari straightened. "I have formed a connection. In my own way." Varen's eyes flashed. "That is not the way of our people. The bond must be pure, or it is worthless." Elias stepped forward. "Excuse me, but who decided that? Because from where I'm standing, she just succeeded where everyone else failed." Varen's expression darkened. "You do not understand what you meddle with. Human, this is not your concern." "It is now," Elias said coolly. "Your council sent us here. You wanted a solution. Well, we found one." Exatari lifted her chin. "The bond was made. You cannot deny it." For a long, tense moment, Varen said nothing. Then his gaze flickered to the guards. "Remove them. Immediately." Elias barely had time to react before the guards moved in. Reggie's hand went to his side, where his weapon should have been, if they hadn't been forced to surrender them upon arrival. Jay swore under his breath. Nia pulled Exatari back protectively. "So much for diplomacy," Elias muttered. Exatari's fingers curled into fists. "They will not listen. They never listen." Elias met her gaze, then grinned. "Then maybe it's time to make some noise." The guards moved in fast, but humans were faster. Years of adapting to unpredictable environments had made them experts at thinking on their feet. Elias shoved Exatari behind him as Reggie stepped forward, arms raised in mock surrender, his signature smirk never wavering. All right, Reggie drawled. "Let's not get hasty, boys. We're all civilized beings here, aren't we?" Counselor Varen's expression remained hard as stone. "You were warned. You refused to listen. That leaves us no choice. Elias clenched his jaw. That's funny. Seems like we're the only ones actually listening to her. Tari's hands trembled at her sides. The connection she had formed wasn't traditional, but it was real, no matter how much the Valari Council refused to acknowledge it. Her entire life, she had been told what she couldn't do. Now, for the first time, she had proof of what she could, and they were trying to take it away from her. No, Tari said, her voice quiet but firm. I refuse. Varen narrowed his eyes. You refuse? Tari straightened, lifting her chin. For my entire life, I have obeyed the laws of our people. I have accepted my place, accepted my exile before it was even declared. But now I know I can connect, and you will not take that from me. For the first time, uncertainty flickered in Varen's gaze, but it was brief. He gestured sharply and the guards lunged. Reggie moved first, sidestepping one of the Valari enforcers with practiced ease. He caught the alien's wrist, twisted, and sent them sprawling. Yep, saw that one coming. Jay ducked beneath another guard's reach and darted toward the control panel near the door. Buying us a back door, he called over his shoulder, fingers flying over the unfamiliar interface. Nia grabbed Tari's wrist and pulled her back. Stay close, princess. Elias, meanwhile, squared off with Varen himself. You're making a mistake. Varen's gaze burned with cold fury. The only mistake was allowing you to interfere. The older Valari moved fast, faster than Elias had expected. A sharp twist of energy surged through the air as Varen activated a hidden neural disruptor, aiming it straight at Elias's chest. But Elias had fought worse. He dodged, pivoted, and threw his full weight into Varen's midsection, knocking him back. Across the room, Jay let out a triumphant whoop. Got it. Doors unlocked. Move, move, move. The team didn't hesitate. Nia pulled Tari through first, followed by Reggie and Jay. Elias stepped back toward the exit, keeping his eyes on the advancing guards. Varen straightened, pure disdain etched into every line of his face. You cannot outrun this, Captain Ward. You cannot outrun your nature. Humans are reckless, stubborn creatures who do not belong among us. Elias smirked. And yet, we're the ones making history. Funny how that works. Then he slammed his fist into the door's emergency lockdown panel, sealing the entrance behind them. The corridors of the Valari capital were a maze of luminous pathways and gravity-defying platforms. Jay's fingers danced over his handheld scanner as they ran, mapping out the quickest route to the nearest docking bay. Tari struggled to keep pace, her breath uneven. Where are we going? Off-world, Elias said, scanning the area for hostiles. At least until we figure out how to make them listen. Tari hesitated. Running will not change their minds. No, Nia agreed, but it'll buy us time to prove them wrong. Reggie skidded to a halt in the intersection, peering down both corridors. Bad news. We've got inbound from both sides. Jay cursed under his breath. And I'm guessing they're not here to wish us safe travels. Elias turned to Tari. Do you trust us? The princess blinked, startled. Aye. Because if you do, Elias continued, then we need to do something very human right now. Tari swallowed hard, then nodded. What? He grinned. Improvise. Tari steadied her breathing, her fingers tightening around the edges of her cloak as the humans formed a loose defensive perimeter around her. The corridors of the Valari capital shimmered with eerie luminescence, casting elongated shadows of the approaching guards. Elias caught her gaze, offering a reassuring nod. Time for that improvisation. Princess, you ready? Tari took a deep breath. She had spent her life as an outcast, a burden the Valari had cast aside. But now she had something she had never had before. A choice. Yes, she said firmly. I am ready. Reggie cracked his knuckles. All right then, let's make some noise. The team burst into action. Jay tapped rapidly on his datapad, hacking into the capital security grid. I can disrupt their surveillance for a minute, maybe two, he called out. After that, they'll know exactly where we are. 2 minutes is plenty. Elias said, already leading them toward an auxiliary docking bay. We just need a way to... Split up? Tari interrupted. The group skidded to a stop. What? Nia asked, eyes narrowing. Tari's expression was calm but resolute. They want me. If I go alone, they will hesitate. You will have the time you need to escape. Nope, Reggie said immediately. Not happening. I am not your responsibility. You're our friend, Nia corrected. And friends don't ditch each other in the middle of a prison break. Tari hesitated, something raw and unfamiliar tightening in her chest. Friendship. Another human absurdity. Another human truth. Then we need another plan, she admitted. Jay's eyes lit up. I might have something, but it's going to be insane. Reggie grinned. Now that I like to hear. The docking bay loomed ahead, a sleek Valari cruiser resting in its berth. The problem? A full squad of guards stood between them and freedom. All right, Jay muttered. We need a distraction. Tari straightened, stepping forward. No, we need a statement. Before anyone could stop her, she pressed the activation switch on the neural interface Nia had built. A pulse of energy radiated outward, not a mind link, not in the traditional sense, but a connection nonetheless. The guards hesitated, their thoughts caught in the unfamiliar ripple. Tari stepped forward, her voice ringing clear. I am Tari of the Valari. You call me an exile, a failure. But today I stand here not as an outcast, but as something new. The guards exchanged uncertain glances. The Valari were rigid in their traditions, bound by their laws of mind-linking and hierarchy. Yet here she stood, surrounded by aliens, forging a path they had deemed impossible. You fear what you do not understand, Tari continued. But I have seen what the humans can do. They build bridges where others see only walls. They adapt where others resist. And today, I choose to stand with them. Silence. Then movement. One guard lowered his weapon. Then another. A flicker of doubt, of curiosity. But Varen's voice cut through the stillness. Enough. The counselor strode into view. Fury etched across his face. This is a mockery of our ways. You are not Valari. You never were. Tari held his gaze. Perhaps not, she admitted. Perhaps I am something else entirely. Varen raised his hand, energy crackling at his fingertips. Elias tensed, ready to intervene. But then, Tari did something no Valari had ever done before. She laughed, not a bitter laugh, not a forced one, a genuine human laugh. The sound rippled to the docking bay, light and defiant and free. And for the first time, the unshakable Varen hesitated. That was all the humans needed. Now! Elias shouted. Reggie and Nia surged forward, disarming the nearest guards with practiced ease. Jay overloaded the control panels, throwing the lights into chaos. Elias grabbed Tari's hand and ran. The cruiser's ramp extended just as they reached it. The team scrambled aboard, sealing the hatch behind them. Nia bolted for the controls, fingers flying over the unfamiliar systems. Hang on, she shouted as the engines roared to life. Outside, Varen's voice echoed in rage. You cannot run forever, Tari. You will always be nothing. Tari took a slow breath. Then she turned toward the viewport, her fingers tapping a familiar rhythm against the console. The humans grinned. No, she murmured. I will be more. The ship blasted into the sky, leaving the past and the Valari's old ways far behind.